Hello, everyone. Welcome to another review from Simply Nerdy. I'm your host, Steven. I'm joined today by Anthony and Austin, and we are here to review Mistborn the Deckbuilding Game.
Oh, hey, that's pretty snazzy. Look at that. Wow.
So yeah, right off the bat, let me just start off because this is something that I talked about during my unboxing video, is just the artwork. The artists that worked on this game did phenomenal work. So much so that for the first time, I had to put sleeves on every card. I've never had to do that before, but I put sleeves on these things because, man, I do not want these things to bend. I don't want anything to happen to these things. And, man, I love looking at the artwork and seeing everything that I've read in the Mistborn series come to life. Anthony and Austin, what are your standouts for this game?
For me, maybe it's just that I feel like this is, and I haven't played a ton of the board games that have been made with the Cosmere in mind, but I feel like this is the first one where it feels a little bit more complete, a little bit more its own kind of experience rather than just this is, the Mistborn flavor of Monopoly. I don't know, something like that. So that was kind of fun to me, that it feels like, well, I mean, it was built from the ground up for that theme. And I think that goes a long way in making the experience better. So I like how complete of a package it feels.
Yeah, I would agree with both of those sentiments. I feel like the artwork is very pretty. It's a well-packaged game, a lot of really cool parts. Just the way they incorporated the metal burning and, some of the characters without spoiling too much for people who are unfamiliar. They did that in a tasteful way. But I think that my favorite part by far is just the design. It was so meticulously put together, carefully crafted in a way that, you can, for example, there's two different modes. You can do a free-for-all mode with 1v1 or 1v1v1 or 4 people, or you can play a co-op versus the Lord Ruler, and I just thought that was a really cool idea. So I'm sure we'll jump into more of that later, but props to the creator John Clare for such awesome design.
Absolutely. And the fact you can even take on the Lord Ruler in a solo campaign. Mm-hmm. Pretty cool, pretty suicidal, but we won't go there. Yeah,
it's very difficult.
I want to play off what Austin just said about the burning of the metals, because that was done very well. Since we were familiar with the books, like as I played the game, he helped me understand the magic system in Mistborn better. I understood the flaring versus the burning a lot better than I did when I was reading the books, and it was fantastic how it was all incorporated, and how each player had their own specific metal that they are experts at, and how that went into play, how that played out. Oh, it was beautifully done. Even people that are not familiar with the books, I know I've been saying that we're familiar with the books, therefore it's awesome. I played with people like my father-in-law. I had my father-in-law come and play with me once during the holiday, and he didn't know anything about the books. He's played D&D back in the 80s, and he's kind of familiar with these like nerddoms, and he picked it up and played it just fine, and we beat Lord Ruler on his first playthrough. Nice. And he enjoyed himself quite a lot. He said he'd give the game a 10 out of 10. And that was from someone who has not read the books, and he had a really good time.
That's great.
We played against the Lord Ruler and won somehow. Anyway.
Without cheating, right?
Without eating pumpkins. We beat Lord Ruler.
No pumpkin eaters.
Inside joke.
Nope. Yes. But then while we were playing Mistborn, so it's appropriate.
Yeah. For those of you who, we kind of coined that term because we were playing a game, and Steven and I were trying to face the Lord Ruler. It was my first time facing him, and it was a 2v1, just Steve and I. And the entire time we were misunderstanding the rules and inadvertently giving an advantage to the Lord Ruler, and so he absolutely creamed us in what felt like was an impossible mode. For example, we would
Was.
accidentally move his dominance more than was required by some of the cards, or I don't remember. There's a few other things that we did. So we said that we were cheater pumpkin eaters, and so the whole night we were just making references to eating pumpkins. It was great.
But for the record, the Lord Ruler was eating pumpkins too. So.
He was.
It was. It went both ways. But we lost miserably. That's probably the one thing I can say that's negative about the game, and I don't know how they could have done it any better. Is the rules are hard to understand at some points. There's some questions that are left unanswered at times, and left to interpretation.
Yes, I agree. The rule book itself is very disjointed. I feel like there were a lot of rules where I was like, I remember reading this, but I don't know where it is, and so I'd have to skim through the entire thing to find the one little segment on the bottom or something, a side note on the right that would have a very random, almost a tidbit of information.
Random tip. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And before anyone says, hey, you can upload it to AI and have AI help you, we did that, and it's not always 100% accurate. So you can't always trust what the AI is saying to you. Though it does help. It does help, but it's not always accurate.
Yeah. So, and while the rules are a little convoluted, I think as the more you play and the more you sometimes you just got to ask around. I feel like I was reaching out to communities, and after playing the game multiple times, I kind of realized, oh, that's actually what we were supposed to be doing. So I know Anthony had to correct us on what the coins or the funding, right? Because we were accidentally pulling boxings for every coin point that we had per turn.
We're like, ooh, all these boxings.
And somehow we still got destroyed. Yeah.
It's okay.
Maybe what you guys need to consider is that it's not necessarily so much the rules as it is you guys just being ADHD.
What was this say? I don't want to play.
Or I just have the memory of a goldfish looking sad. Because I read through I sat there and read through the rule book cover to cover.
I just have to yank your chains.
You know, no, you're absolutely right. Because I don't like to read rule books, man. I don't. I waited to play with you guys or someone else to teach me how to play. Oh man! But anyway, that's probably my one criticism. But that's
the thing. I felt like I think it's kind of difficult to make a game that has so many intricacies and dependencies with rules, and so I think I don't know if this is Mr. Clare's debut into board game creation. I actually don't know what else he's done, but I feel like considering how he was able to implement, basically create a good mix of Mistborn specific rules and make it mesh well with a standard deck builder was I felt like it did a pretty good job. So
there's one more thing I gotta say about the rule set, and that is I do not envy the designer who had to point out all the rules and label everything. I don't even know how I would get started on something like that. That'd be a very hard task to explain this complicated of a game. So there's it's nothing against the designer, nothing against the team who designed the rule book. It's just I wish it was a little bit more.
Yeah, one other gripe that I had was the balancing. I know that we talked a little bit about the difficulty of the Lord Ruler, but I've also found that there are some characters who I feel are a little more overpowered than the others. And I've played this game. I have not played as Vin. I've played this game about 8 to 10 times now, and I've only played Kelsier, Shan, and Marsh. But I have noticed that Vin seems to be strongly favored, I guess, in terms of I don't know, the mechanics. But
her level 1 abilities, you mean?
Yeah. Well, exactly.
So yeah, that's really the only way to differentiate the characters.
Well, and even the medals that she can combine with some of the cards that you can buy from the market and everything, it makes it a little easier. Because when I'm Marsh, for example, and you have to burn, I think it's bronze. I think his is like mission oriented, but a lot of the other bronze ones, like it's great, but when can I do damage? Then I have to buy some iron or some steel cards, which is great. I can orient my deck, and it's very flexible. I can build a deck around that, but it's not as balanced as I'd like it to be, character-wise. But
Sounds like a personal problem.
yeah, maybe it is.
I'm just kidding.
Very well could be.
Get it? I'm just kidding. No, it really does. It's just, yeah, it's hard. You gotta learn how to balance your metals and get the attack cards when you need it. Get those bronze. Get those mission points when you need it. And it's hard because each character, has their strengths and weaknesses, and
It does require a different strategy. I mean, if you have, one of those characters, you got to focus on doing the missions a little differently versus always trying to dish out damage. Or the other, that kind of leads to my other point that I wanted to bring up is I felt like the game, when you're doing co-op versus the Lord Ruler, I felt like it needed different difficulty levels. So, whether that's adjusting the Lord Ruler's health or I had some other ideas, and I can't remember now, but there are some ways that you could balance that. Maybe adjusting how often dominance, how it moves up the dominance track with the edicts and the adversaries. There's different things that can be done there to tweak it, and maybe have some house rules to make it a little easier. But we've won the last 2 times that we fought against the Lord Ruler. We've won, so I mean, it could be that.
It out.
Yeah, so it is a challenge, and I enjoy that about this game. It's challenging, and it should be against
you. Always win when you're in the single digits.
Actually, I think
for me, it's like one play away from death.
Yeah. I think that when there are 3 players against Lord Ruler, I've found that that's a little easier than, say, single, 1v1 or 2v1. Or even 4v. I haven't really tried. I don't know if I've tried 4v1 actually.
I probably have to almost play both sides of the fence here, because I agree with Austin that I think it would be cool if, like in future revisions or, maybe some expansions, that we see some adjustments that allow for, a little less difficulty. Because the first, I played this game with my wife and several friends, including Stephen and Austin, but also many others, like a whirlwind for the first few days after we'd gotten it. And I feel like we lost almost every single match against the Lord Ruler by a mile, and we just kept on thinking, man, this is almost impossible. This just feels too hard. And I was getting to the point where I'm like, it's hard to want to play because I basically can expect to lose. That being said, we kept coming back because we just wanted to try again. And we have gotten to a point where, we have, so the last, 3 times I've played it, we've won against Lord Ruler. And I think that there are some strategies that it kind of, that it forces you to learn quickly, to be more effective. And, I don't know. I mean, it could be the next time we play it, he'll just spank us all over the map, and it'll, okay.
It all depends on how his deck is shuffled, man.
Yeah, seriously. RNGs.
Yeah, there's definitely, I will say, that is another thing, that it feels like his power is overinflated to the point where RNG plays too much of a role in how things can go. Because, let's say you've got him on the ropes, but then you happen to pull the 3 times dominance up card, and everyone bumps else, and he just happens to 3 hit all of you, and you're all dead.
Yep.
That feels very dependent on RNG, no matter how well you were doing before that. So there is some elements to that where I'm like, some refinements would help to make it not feel quite so based on luck. But that being said, I have, like I said, found that with some very, very careful strategy, you have to be practically optimal to get into a position where you can beat them consistently. But if you're doing a really good job, it's definitely possible. Stressful, but possible.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think a couple other things I want to mention. I didn't feel like there were enough heals. There's not enough healing, and there are certain cards that have some some great abilities, first and second ability, where you can get up to 7 heals. But even if you had like a heal or gain 1 health as an additional on the first ability. Anyway, I think that's something that could have been granted a lot more, and it would have been nicer to have.
Yeah, I think I can agree with that. I think I will say one thing that I think also could use some tweaking, some refinement with either future, like I said, future revisions or expansions, is that
yes, please.
The damage values definitely feel balanced with competitive play in mind, because unless you're building specifically for a damage dealing deck, on an average hand you might have maybe somewhere in the range of 2 to 3 attack. And when you're fighting the Lord Ruler, first of all, you've got all the adversaries, and most of them have more health than that, I find. And if you can't deal at least their health, that amount of health or more, they're not going anywhere, because you can't decrement their health. You have to do it all or nothing. So you legitimately have to be able to hit hard enough. I guess you just maybe the lore is they heal immediately if you don't take them out, kind of thing. But it's tough when you're using the same damage values that you would in competitive, but it doesn't go nearly as far in cooperative. And so I think that's one thing that maybe they could change. Although maybe the real answer is just go get good.
Go get good.
Get good, noob.
And then also I think that the Lord Ruler's own damage values are extremely overinflated. There are a couple times
and healing.
Yeah, don't even mention healing.
But I mean, they want you to try and complete the missions. I think that's the reason why he heals so much, is like they were really reinforcing here the importance of completing the 3 missions.
And I think that there's definitely a proper approach, strategizing co-op that you just kind of have to figure out as you play. But yeah, no, there's just a couple times when you do like he gets a single turn, and all of a sudden everyone takes like 10 damage, and you're like, I'm sorry, that's like a third of my health, and I can't heal in this dang game most of the time. So that was a single turn, and he takes a turn between every player. So
yeah.
So there's a couple, like some of these values feel like they could afford some adjusting, but I mean, I guess the one thing I can say is that it's very lore accurate. So it's definitely creating a what's the word I'm looking for? A authentic experience.
Sure. That's something my wife complained about, and I was like, well, it's exactly what happened in the book. So read the book now. You lived it.
Yeah, it's definitely something that anybody who's familiar with Mistborn will really enjoy. They'll probably appreciate a lot more. But people who are unfamiliar, as you were saying earlier, Steve, it's something that people who are unfamiliar with it will also enjoy. I had a few friends and also a couple brothers who've played, and they're unfamiliar with Brandon Sanderson's work, but they really enjoyed this deck building game.
No matter how many times I lost to the Lord Ruler or lost in the PvP mode, Anthony and Austin, whenever I lost, I walked away with a huge smile on my face every time. And even though I knew I was going to play the game and lose to the Lord Ruler, I was still excited to play. So that has to account for something.
Well,
I always came with a smile.
We have to acknowledge something, though. That is very much an average Steven effect. This guy over here is basically, you can always have fun, and that's a compliment, Steve. So,
well, I think
some of us are not quite so awesome in that respect, but we try.
It's a false doctrine, and I disagree wholeheartedly. But it's just a fun way to connect with friends, and if you want to have a good time, this is a great way to do it.
Absolutely.
It does not take 60 minutes to play. At least if you're playing against Lord Ruler, it takes like 3.
Average takes me 2 hours or more.
Yeah. It's either 2 hours or 3.
Okay. When you said you were saying it takes 30 minutes, and then you said it takes like 3. I'm like, minutes?
Oh, Sorry, my bad.
Are you
3 hours. 3 hours.
Is that how quickly you went
ADHD. No concept.
Units. Anyway,
I have a problem with units in math too. Yeah, go ahead.
I was actually going to jump back to the RNG comment that we made earlier. To its credit, to the game's credit and the creator's credit, I feel like the RNG aspect actually makes it really fun too. It adds a lot of variability. You know, there's going to be some games where you're going to have a really strong deck or a lot of allies, or some games you might end up with a lot of ATM, and other games the ATM's not going to do jack squat. You know, but regardless, every time you play, it's a different experience, and the different characters adds to that. It makes it fun to try different things. Even though I haven't played as Finn yet, one of these days I will.
just stop randomizing and do it.
So
I know. I should.
that is something else that
Vin is probably my favorite character.
Yeah,
awesome.
she's great. Which one though? Vin the Prodigy or Vin the Warrior?
The Warrior, although
the Warrior.
I think the Prodigy definitely has a sleeper ability if you know what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, so for those unfamiliar with it, there's 2 different Vin cards. One of them is the Prodigy, which I think allows you to eliminate cards, and then there's Vin the Warrior, which gives you 1 attack point, 1 health point, and 1 of something else, either a mission point. or coin funding. Yep.
Yeah, it's the healing is what makes it so good.
Both are solid though. Like if you can set up your deck in a way where you're eliminating your fluff, then that can be really good. Because I feel like sometimes there's not a lot of elimination cards as well.
No, yeah, it feels like most of the really strong abilities in this game are pretty hard to come by. You just kind of have to get lucky enough to pull it from the market and then have the money to buy it before.
Yeah, sure.
Wipe it out.
Yep, exactly. Or before someone else buys it.
Yep.
Before someone if you're doing co-op, then if you're doing PvP, then yeah. Yeah. So I would say I did want to comment on the last thing you said, Austin, which is just that you were saying like that RNG kind of makes it variable enough that it's always a different experience, and I will agree. I think it's important that each round can kind of play out differently based on the luck of the draw, and as long as you're accounting for that in your strategy, it does make for a different experience. I think the only reason I have some degree of hesitancy of saying that is a feature is because deck builders are my favorite kind of board game. I just absolutely love it. It almost feels like an RPG to me. Like you're growing your character's strength and being able to do more. Like that's something that I really connect with.
Yeah.
But I think probably in my opinion, the most well done deck builder ever made is Dominion. And the reason I love Dominion is that there really isn't any RNG in that game other than the RNG.
The market of what cards you can buy too, but.
Right. Well, no, like there's no RNG. I mean, there is when you set it up, but once the round starts, you know what you have on hand. So like the only RNG that in that game comes from how you draw your cards.
Okay.
But with the market, you lay out 10 cards, and that is the only 10 cards you can get, and they're never coming through or being eliminated. You just you see what's there, and you buy them when you have the money for it. So there's a couple things that I feel like I'd love to see Mistborn the Deckbuilding Game learn from Dominion and apply in ways that would make it even better. I don't think they're going to change how the market randomizes, because I think that would be too fundamental a change. And this is really the last critique I'm going to say before I get into my positives. But I feel like some of the fundamentals of deck builders, things like being able to draw more cards or eliminate cards or increase your buying power, is a little bit harder to come by in the Mistborn game. Because for one thing, for example, you only ever get funding cards. They're only worth 1 coin. Near the end, they're a complete waste of space in your deck. And yet it's kind of hard to replace them with higher value coin cards, because those ones always require you to be burning metals. So it's sometimes hard to know how you're going to build it. So I would say I would love for them to introduce more ways for you to get cards that allow you to draw more cards, because that is a deck boosting thing, even if you have a fluffy deck. Just things like that. There's a couple things I'd like them to make easier to do.
Yeah, and I know Steve and maybe you, Anthony, had also mentioned the possibility for expansions. Maybe that's something they could incorporate when they bring in the maybe an additional character with
Max and Wayne.
Well, I was going to stick with Mistborn the first era and say either like Ferukemi or what's the other one? Hemilurgy?
Ferukemi and Hemilurgy.
Hemilurgy?
Ferukemi and Hemilurgy, yeah. So both ways. No, you haven't, Sean. No, you haven't, Sean. But what I was going to say is the ability to draw more could be something that would line up with the lore where you're storing energy in the metals, right? Like so it's allowing you to draw more cards later. I don't know. That's I could see him working.
Be like a set aside kind of ability, so you can pull it into your next hand and you have 6 instead of 5 or something like that.
Anyway, yeah. Something like that.
Yeah. Either way, I think I agree. I think it would be cool for them to, I hope there's expansions.
I hope so too.
Because this is cool enough and well implemented enough that I want to see more.
Yeah, and they did not limit themselves to the first era. It's called Mistborn the Deckbuilding Game.
Mm-hmm.
Not Mistborn Era 1. Not it's the full Mistborn. So,
right.
Maybe the expansions.
Yep.
We'll see.
Could be. Yeah.
Sorry.
It'd be cool if they introduced more characters. I don't know that I'd want to see more players in a game. I don't necessarily want a 6-person game because that would take way too long. But it would be nice to have additional options for characters, so I'm not stuck with Marsh and Shan every game.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with Marsh. Get out of here.
There's nothing wrong with him. I just like the opportunity to play someone else once in a while, But that's my own fault. So I like to randomize it, and I just happen to be,
Don't the rules say to randomize it? I swear it says.
It does. It says to. Yeah.
That is one of those things though, where when you're starting the game, it doesn't really matter. It's the rules matter when you're in the middle of it.
That's fair. So rules are more like guidelines.
There you go.
At the start of the game, no.
Steven, just kidding.
That's not again. Anyway, okay. So rapid fire with just so I still didn't get to my positive stuff. I was kind of talking about some things I'd love to see them do, but maybe that in itself is kind of a positive because I like this game enough that I want to see them.
Exactly.
Get to the next level and do even more with it. So yes, that's a good thing. But that being said, I feel like considering how difficult it is to, like I said at the start, create something this with this much depth and have it be so lore applicable as well, I think that they did a solid job with that. And I think even in terms of like the difficulty balancing with the Lord Ruler, I'm less critical about it now than I used to be. And I think that there's one of the things I've noticed, for example, is that it's pushed me to be more strategic and more optimal in how I approach deck building. Yes. Because, for example, in a game like Dominion, you don't have to be quite as optimal because as long as you're, building your, let's say your deck around the idea of, okay, it's got a lot of fluff, but I have a lot of draw cards. And so I'm just constantly burning through it anyway. And so my deck is still powerful because I'm moving through it more quickly. You can't do that as much in this game, so you have to think a lot more critically about what you do with a given hand, and it just really makes you just have to think really optimally. You have to constantly be thinking what's kind of the makeup of my deck. You have to keep that in the back of your mind as you go, and you kind of have to think, okay, well, hey, I've managed to get a card that comes through my deck often and lets me eliminate. Cool, I can eliminate a bunch of cards. That makes it so I can afford to buy more cards without it clogging things. Whereas maybe near the end of the game you haven't run across a single elimination card. Well, then adjust your strategy by not buying things instead. Like there's ways that you can readjust. The main thing I came away from that I really liked is that I think what the creator was trying to push each person to do is find a specialization. Because I think a lot of the time you take the approach of, well, I need to make sure I can do a little bit of everything so that, I can respond to any scenario. The problem is and I've been using this as almost a metaphor for just life in general lately, is that if you're a jack of all trades and a master of none, then you're just going to get pounded by the Lord Ruler all the time. Because let's say, hey, you have a little bit of attack, a little bit of mission, a little bit of healing everywhere, but then you get a level 6 monster pulled on you, and you never, ever will ever pull a hand that has at least 6 attack in it. Well, you're done.
Nope.
But if you happen to have someone in your party who specializes as an attacker and is like, oh, that's null picking, he's gone, then that really helps. Anyway, so it's just cool to see how the combination of the character you play as and the luck of the draws from the market can force you to rethink your strategy on the dime, or should I say on the boxing, as you go. And so I feel like, I guess maybe, all right, I could keep going, but I'm going to say...
I know, I was going to say, we don't want to turn this into a tips video. We want to...
But if you liked what you heard, stay tuned. There's more coming in our tips and tricks video that we're going to make it ASAP. So
I liked how the game has enough limitations while also enough, careful balancing that, and enough challenge that it has made me learn how to get better at just deck builder game in general. And I think that's the sign of as well, a game well implemented. You just definitely have to have the patience to get there, because they're, like I said, first 10 rounds, I'm like, this guy can't be beaten.
Takes a learning curve.
Once you figure it out, though, it's a lot of fun.
So we get into scores then, and then wrap it up, and then we're gonna stay tuned again for our tips and tricks video coming real soon.
Yes.
Alrighty. I will go first, I suppose, since I'm leading this out. I think I'm gonna give this game a 9 out of 10.
Nice.
Because of some of the balance issues that we talked about. But for the most part, this game plays absolutely incredible, and I just leave every time with a big smile on my face. I just want to play more. Like, it ends and I want to start a new round all over again. Absolutely love it.
I think I'd also give it a 9 for basically the same reasons. There are things I would do to, if I was in charge, to refine it and make it even, have even more balance. But, at the same time, it's rare that a game can defeat me so often and yet keep me coming back.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's a sign of a good game. It's definitely one that I want to keep going back to, even though it's sometimes a very lengthy game. So the time to play it is hard. It's hard to find the time. But I would have to say an 8 out of 10, which is solid. I think it's a fantastic game. It's well created, well crafted, and it's a lot of fun that anybody can have, not just Brandon Sanderson fans. So
love it.
Cool.
And that brings the official Simply Nerdy score to an 8.7.
Yay!
You rounded up to 9. I'm just kidding.
hey,
Austin and his always lower scores.
not always,
That's awesome.
but
Most of the time.
I love it. Anyway, thank you so much for listening, guys. If you like this review, please give us a subscribe, a like, and ring the notification bell so you're notified whenever we have another review. Or if you want to stay tuned for our tips and tricks video, which will be uploaded very soon, stay tuned for that. And until next time, guys, keep it nerdy.
keep it nerdy.